Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. New Hope Radio, Tuesday edition, brand new week of live broadcasting right here on 1590 WARV. Also coming your way at newhopecc.tv. Click Facebook, that's a good one. And also WARV.net, because they stream the station all day long. Good programming all day long. So you keep it tuned right there all day long. And thanks for tuning in at 12:30 here for New Hope Radio. Aaron is here, our host, to meet you and greet you in our Facebook audience. So, you know what? Always get a friend to listen. We try to bring you messages that are uplifting and encouraging and things people need to hear. So we hope that you'll spread the good word and let people know about New Hope Radio. Karen's on board. I think she's like in sunny Florida. I will be there in a few weeks. Can't wait. I miss you guys, but I can't wait to get to some warmer weather for a while. Okay, today we begin a brand new series that I hope will be inspiring to you and uplifting. It's it's a wonderful thing to want to be used by God. And yet sometimes I think that we are our own worst enemy when it comes to that. I wonder if a lot of folks don't give God an opportunity to use them because of the way that they see themselves. Today we're going to talk about what do you do when you feel inadequate. Feelings of inadequacy, they can really hold us back, especially from doing some great things. We may not feel qualified or good enough to do something great or to do what God has called us to. This series is going to show you that God can use anybody. I like this series because it's for everybody. And you're going to learn that God can use anybody. And we'll also see some of the qualities that he's looking for in people. And they're not the qualities that we probably think we need. So, keep that in mind. If God can use anybody, that means you. God can use you. As a matter of fact, throughout the Bible, Old and New Testament, God has used people in a great way that a lot of people wouldn't even give a second thought to. They wouldn't be like the first people that you would pick to be on your team. But they were the first people that God picked to be on his team, because God looks at people differently than people do. So this is for you. If you feel inadequate, if you feel like, you don't measure up, I'm glad you tuned in, because you're going to see today that God can use you. Today we're going to walk with Moses. And we're going to see that Moses was a guy, he really felt inadequate. What does it mean to be inadequate? It means to feel insufficient or too little, inferior, not enough. I felt like that most of my life, and I still dabble in it now. But at the end of the message, we're going to see why feeling inadequate is okay. As a matter of fact, it's pretty good. And we're going to see why at the end of the message. But sometimes, when God puts a calling on our lives, we may not respond because of the feelings I just mentioned. Inferior, not good enough, too little, inadequate. Hey, maybe that's what Moses felt when God called him. God called Moses to a really big task, to lead the Jewish people out of Egypt. At this time that God called Moses, Moses was living in exile in the land of Midian. He ran from the Egyptians because he killed one. An Egyptian was beating on a fellow Hebrew, and Moses went over there to defend him, and bango, gave him a Mike Tyson. Laid him out. Guy died. So Moses had to run for his life. So he ran to Midian. And when he was in Midian, he met a woman, and he married her. Not that day. I'm sure they had a few dates. A couple of movies, dinner, And then he became a shepherd for her father. I guess you could say that Moses was living a simple, contented life. Right? Taking care of the sheep, nice simple life, not dealing with the issues of the world, not dealing with governments and nuclear war and all this, just kind of taking care of the sheep. Right? And then boom, one day it happened. What was it that happened? Well, here's where we pick up the story in Exodus chapter 3. And we're going to be in verse 1. Many of you might be familiar with the story. If you're not, that's okay. You'll hear it today. All right? So here we go. Moses was pasturing the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the west side of the wilderness. And he came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And it's called the mountain of God because God met Moses there. And the angel of the Lord appeared to Moses, in a blazing fire from the midst of a bush. And Moses looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, yet it was not consumed. So Moses sees this bush, and it's burning, but it's not going out. Like the bush isn't getting smaller, and then okay, it just keeps on burning. You know what I like about Moses? He wasn't so over-occupied that he didn't take notice of his surroundings. When this bush burst into flames, he took notice of it. Moses was kind of aware of where he was and what was going on around him. Sometimes we can miss out on what's going on around us because we're so self-occupied. You know what I'm talking about? Somebody drops something and doesn't realize it. And if you're overoccupied with yourself, you don't see it. And you don't say, excuse me, you dropped something, because you're overoccupied with yourself. Here's one that I learned. You can be so overoccupied with yourself that you're in line at the cash register and the person in front of you is a little short on change and they can't pay their total grocery bill. They might be short 50 cents or 70 cents or $1, maybe $2. And you know what I've learned over the past couple of years? To keep my eye on the person in front of me. I do this now. I'm watching the person in front of me. And I'm making sure they have enough money to pay the bill. And I see them, and it's and if they're short a little bit, I'm going to make sure I'm there. Because I learned a very hurtful lesson one time. Hurtful to me, because I failed. And it was around Christmas, and this lady was buying groceries, and I'm in La La Land like usual. And then she leaves, and I notice a box of cereal on the side of the register that the cash register put there. And I said, I saw you put that box there. Why is that there? She said, the lady didn't have enough money to pay for it, so she had to put it back. And I'm like, I felt like such a dope. For $1. She had to put the cereal back. And ever since then, I always remain alert. That if somebody's going to be short and they can't buy food, not going to be because of me, that I will have the $1 or the $2 or the 50 cents or whatever it is to spare them, number one, the embarrassment, and then number two, to having to put something back. You don't want to, if you bought it, it's because you need it. And you don't want to have them to put something back. Okay? So Moses, he knows what's going on around him too. So as God's people, right, we should practice the art, I call it the art of alertness. Be alert of your surroundings. Be alert of the world around you. Okay? That's a good lesson for today. All right, so verse 3. So Moses said, I got to turn aside. And I got to see this marvelous sight. Why the bush isn't burned up. He's not interested in the burning bush. He's interested in why it's not going out. Why does it just keep on burning? And Moses goes over to look at the bush. And when the Lord saw that he turned aside to look, God called him from the midst of the bush. I'm like, are you kidding? A talking bush. It's incredible. And the voice in the bush said, Moses, Moses. And you know what Moses did? He talked back to the bush. I'm like, what? Now, it sounds funny, right? But I know some of you talk to your cats, and you talk to your dogs, and you talk to your parakeets. They don't know what you're saying, but you talk to them. So Moses is talking to a bush. Okay, I can deal with that. But one writer said, the manifestations which God anciently made of himself were always accompanied by clear, unmistakable signs that the communications were really from heaven. In other words, though God spoke in funny ways, people always understood that it was God. Whether God speaks through a bush or God speaks through a donkey, people realize, hey, that's coming from God. This was evidence to Moses that God was speaking. He saw a fire, but no human agent to kindle it. He heard a voice, but no human lips could he see from which it came. He saw no living being, but there was one in the bush, in the heat of the flames, and he knew him, he knew Moses, and addressed him by name. Who could this be, Moses figured, but the divine being? This has to be God. And it was. And God told Moses to remove his sandals from his feet because he was standing on holy ground. See, wherever the presence of God is, it's holy. God's presence makes a place holy. You know, God's presence, if you're a believer, is inside you. You know what that makes you? Holy. So God identified himself as the God of his fathers, Moses' fathers, and he's seen the affliction of the Hebrews under the Egyptian taskmasters. See, for 400 years, the Hebrews were the slaves to the Egyptians, and they drove them hard. And God said, man, I've been watching, but you know what? It's over. It's over. It's not going on anymore. And God said to Moses, I want to deliver them. And I want to bring them to a beautiful place to live with their families. And he said, Moses, I want to use you. Now, Moses probably felt pretty accomplished as a shepherd, but now he's called to do something for God. And this is where the feelings of inadequacy begin to take over. Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh? I mean, Pharaoh's like, what? He's the president of the world. He's the big kahuna, the head cheese. And he's got a warrant out for Moses' arrest. So Moses is like, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, that I should bring the sons of Israel out of Egypt? Like, why would God choose him? What was so special about Moses that God couldn't use somebody else? Did you ever feel that way? Do you ever feel like, why would God call me when there's so many other more qualified people? Or so many other more gifted people? Why me? I get a strike against me. Why would God use me? I mean, look at my past. Why would God use me? And God said to Moses, don't worry, Moses. I'll be with you. And Moses said to God, he said, look, I'm going to the sons of Israel, and I will say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. And they're going to say to me, well, what's his name? What do I tell them? And God said, here's my name. I am who I am. That's my name. What does I am who I am mean? It means eternal God. Tell them eternal God sent you. Because that's who's sending you. Because that's who I am. And then Moses said, what if they don't believe me? Or what if they don't listen to me? For they might say, God didn't talk to you. Come on, Moses. He wouldn't talk to you. And you know what God said to Moses? He said, okay, let's take a test. Take that shepherd's staff that's in your hand and throw it on the ground. Threw it on the ground. It became a snake. He said, now pick it up by the tail. He picked it up by the tail, which I would never do. But Moses did. And it became a staff again. Like, whoa. Then God said, put your hand in your shirt and take it out. He took it out. It was leprous. He had leprosy. He said, put it back in, take it out. Took it out again. It was restored. It was normal again. So now look at what Moses has just experienced. A burning bush is talking to him. God from the bush said that he wanted to use Moses. The voice revealed himself to be the eternal God. God worked 2 miracles to show his power. And Moses said, oh, this is awesome. Okay, let's go. Actually, no, Moses didn't say that. Moses said to the Lord, oh, please, Lord, I've never been eloquent, neither recently or in time past, since you've spoken to your servant, for I am slow of speech and slow of tongue, whatever that means. Some people think Moses had a speech impediment or he just wasn't good with words. So after all this, Moses says, I can't do this. And God said to Moses, who made your mouth? I will tell you what to say. I'll tell you. What I want us to understand today is that God not only calls you, but he provides for you. He said to Moses, I will be with you. I will empower you. I will speak through you. And why does God do this? Because all the glory goes to him. That's why. See why God can use people that feel inadequate? Because they're not full of their own stuff. And when God works through them, God gets the glory. But if somebody's full of their own stuff and they feel like, oh yeah, man, I'm the one you want, God, God doesn't get any glory because they think it's all about them and their ability. So God looks for people that do feel inadequate. I wonder if the Apostle Paul felt like Moses when God called him. You know, the Apostle Paul said in 2 Corinthians 3, he said, not that we are adequate in ourselves to consider anything as coming from ourselves, but no, our adequacy is from God. It means that our competency comes from God. Our ability comes from God. You see, you can look at yourself and say, ooh, I have little ability. But when you realize that great ability comes from God, God will enable you to do what he's called you to do. The greatest confidence we can have is the confidence that comes from God. Not the confidence that we muster up, but the confidence that comes from God. You know, in the book of Acts, people made a startling discovery. It says that as the people observed the confidence of Peter and John, they understood that they were uneducated and untrained men. They knew Peter and John. They're like, man, we know these guys. These guys are fishermen. They didn't go to school. They don't have a high education. They don't have the best manners. We know these guys. But you know what the Bible says? That when John and Peter spoke, the people were amazed. Oh. And they were amazed. And then it clicked. They realized why Peter and John were so amazing. They began to recognize them as having been with Jesus. Hanging out with Jesus for 3 years transformed them, gave them a confidence, gave them an enablement, gave them a power that they never had before. See what happens when you hang out with Jesus? When you study his word and you have a relationship with him? Oh yeah, man, things change. You become more of a person, a confident, adequate person, because now your adequacy is coming from him. Even in these tumultuous times that we are living in today, we can still have a confidence that God is still God and His perfect will be done. It will. You know, I haven't watched the news in 2 weeks because I'm just like tired of it. I'm tired. I need a break. And it's always, you know, people talk about the threat of World War III and North Korea sending nuclear missiles and we're responding and all this stuff is going on, right? But I have such a confidence in God. I'm not worried about climate change because I have a confidence in God. The more you walk with God, the more your confidence in Him is going to grow. So if you sense a call on your life to do something for the kingdom of God, and I hope you do, because we all have a calling, just remember who God calls. He calls people like Moses that have feelings of inadequacy. I like the way the Apostle Paul put it in 1 Corinthians 1:26. He said, "For consider your calling, brethren, that there were not many wise according to the flesh." In other words, not many with human wisdom, not many mighty, not many noble, not many movers and shakers, right? But God has chosen, here it comes, the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. We're the foolish things. I am. And God has chosen the weak things of the world to shame the things which are strong. I'm a weak thing of the world. That's okay. And the base things of the world. I'm a base thing of the world. And the despised, God has chosen. See, God has chosen what the world looks down on. He's chosen what the world rejects. Okay? Why? So that He may nullify. He's chosen the things that are not so that He may nullify the things that are. In other words, He's taken the small, insignificant humans and He's going to use them. He's going to fill them with His power. And He's going to use them. And they're going to nullify all the movers and the shakers in the world. Why? Because they're going to operate in the power of God, that their adequacy, their sufficiency, doesn't come from themselves, but it comes from God. So isn't that that's like the coolest thing? Maybe you weren't a scholar in school. Maybe you weren't much of an athlete. Maybe you're not too good with your hands. But I'll tell you something. God will look at your heart. And if your heart is humble, He will put a calling on your life. And that calling will be a great calling. And you will look wiser than the wiser of the world, stronger than the strongest in the world. You will be mightier than the mightiest in the world. You know why? Because it all comes from God. Better to be filled up with the things of God than to be filled up with the things of humanity, because the things of humanity, I'll tell you what, man, they are temporal. They're temporal. But the things of God, they are eternal. So, you know the story. Eventually Moses, okay, he went in the power of God, and he went to Pharaoh. And after 10 plagues, Pharaoh finally let the people go. Moses led the people out of Egypt. Pharaoh changed his mind. Like, what did I do? I'm going after them. He mounted up 600 of his best chariots, chased after the Hebrews. Moses led the people to the Red Sea. Uh-oh. People got mad at Moses. Moses, man, you brought us out here to kill us. Here comes Pharaoh. Look at the mountains on the sides. The Red Sea in the front. Man, we are like doomed. This is doomsday. And God said, Moses, hold up your staff. And he held up his staff. and the sea parted. And you know, the people walked across the Red Sea, notice, on dry ground. Now, if you watch the History Channel, the water was still a foot deep. You know why? Because they're knuckleheads, that's why. They don't understand anything. God dried the ground, and they walked across on dry ground. And then when the last Hebrew got across, he closed in the sea and drowned all the Egyptians. Why? Because they were full of their own stuff. God had no use for them. So you see how good it is not to feel that you don't measure up with the people of the world. Because I'll tell you something. You qualify to measure up for the people of God. God wants to use you. God has a plan for your life. And do not let feelings of inferiority or insecurity or inadequacy stop you. You're exactly where God wants you to be. He wants you to be that way so he can fill you and he can strengthen you. Tomorrow we're going to come back and we're going to see that God uses people who are fearful. Ever been afraid? Ever been afraid of like the odds when they're stacked against you? Ever been afraid of something that seemed bigger than you, that you had no control over? That's easy to be afraid of. Well, we're going to see that tomorrow, how those that are fearful, oh man, God has an incredible plan. And God can use you in an incredible way. If you know anybody that is fearful, get them to tune in tomorrow at 12:30. I think we can really help them out with this topic. Okay? If you like the program today, if everybody on Facebook, hit like, hit share. Let's get this series out there so people can hear it. We want to help people. We want people to be everything that God would want them to be. So like it, share it, spread the good news, and we'll be back tomorrow right here for more of New Hope Radio.